and had the good fortune at both schools to have spent time with two legends. At Stanford Law School, Charlie Munger was on the board of visitors, and I had a chance to meet with him when I was launching my investing career, and he was very influential. Then Warren Buffett came to our value investing seminar, and I think that's really the thing that confirmed for me the approach to investing would be characterized by sloth and lethargy and all of the other sins of inactivity, because what they described was an investment process which was very long-term minded. And if you look at the first slide, when I arrived, Warren was really just moving from the world of 50-cent dollar bill investing to franchise investments, franchise investing where there is economic goodwill that yields a return above what a commodity would. And so the 50-cent dollar bill approach that typified early value investors doesn't scale, and it's taxable. And the first point Warren made to our class was the government only gives you one break as an investor. That's the tax deferral on unrealized gains. And so if you can find a business that has the ability to reinvest its current cash flow into creating greater wealth, and you don't have to sell those shares, you don't have to pay tax. And it's very profound. Most people with very high turnover portfolios just don't get it. So that's the one thing. The second point is, though, if you're going to depend on that reinvestment, then the person who runs the business for you, the actual management, have to be trustworthy. They're your agents, managements, and if they don't represent your interests, then the process won't work. They must be owner-minded, and then the next thing you'll need, if you're going to buy and hold, is you have to have a business that has a competitive moat, a business that will absorb reinvestment and return you for it. And so, for example, with Berkshire, he started out with a textile mill, and it absorbed a lot of capital, and it destroyed value along the way. And so what you're looking for is a business that has the capacity for reinvestment, and you really start, it has to have a durable competitive edge. And for me, for some people that edge is technology. I guess the assembled masses here would have a technology orientation. For me, it's consumer brands. Consumer brands have the great benefit of having the consumer believe there to be no adequate substitute. Once I was at a conference in the spirits industry, and I described why it was that I liked the spirits industry so well, and I said, it's because if somebody offered you a drink and they asked what you wanted, if you said a Jack Daniels, and they came back and said, no, we only have Jim Beam, the proper answer in the world that I inhabit is, no thank you. I would rather have water than what is not my brand. That brand loyalty is terrifically important. And so if you're going to have capacity to reinvest, if you have a brand and you can invest behind expanding that brand into different adjacent categories or geographies, it's extremely valuable. And for me, my goal is to find global brands, because there you have the ability to expand into the parts of the world that themselves should grow. If you think about the developing and emerging markets, you have population growth, you have consumer disposable income growth, you have GDP growth, you have the growth of infrastructure for distribution, you have all of that ahead of us. And that's really the area that, for me, welcomes our investments. You also have the very interesting factor that the brands that I typically favor are brands that are kind of left over from the West during a period of time when it was colonial. We own Nestle, we own Unilever, we own Heineken, we own Cadbury. These were products that went around the world, but in a very thin way. They were the products of people who lived in countries that they controlled, but they alone could afford, say, Nino or Nescafe or Maggi soup. Those were products that the countries in which we do a lot of business today were present, they were advertised, but they were very expensive, they were very inaccessible, and they were, because of both, they've become very aspirational. And so as markets around the world now begin to prosper, the second spouse begins to work, they have a more modern lifestyle, where they reach is to the products that they once aspired to have a chance. And we tend to then own businesses that have massive amounts of free cash flow from the mature Western markets where it cannot be deployed profitably. But they have the great good fortune of unmet demand in the developing markets. And so the organic reinvestment is so much safer than trying to redeploy your capital into some wholly new product, some wholly new geography. Our job is simply to reactivate more deeply. Now that requires, to do it right, you need multinational and multilingual management. And multicultural, I should say, multilingual and multicultural. Now, for example, if I ask this audience here, how many people speak more than one language? Okay. So this is Google. How many speak more than two? The hands keep going up. Over three. Okay. So it's an extraordinary capacity. At Kraft Foods, for example, they speak 0.9 languages. In Nestle's headquarters, the senior management will speak 4 or 5 languages. And the ability for that to help them move around the world is extremely valuable, as you all experience here, given your skills. Multicultural, a little more nuanced. For example, in an audience like this in the US, I can usually safely say, without any answers coming back to me, who's your favorite cricket player? I think in this audience, I must have a high percentage who could answer the question. Well, I mean, that's a big deal. 1.7 billion people will go to bed tonight thinking fond thoughts of just one thing, which is cricket. And as an American trying to travel the world, your effectiveness, it just doesn't have the same impact if you don't have those references and those talents. But few companies in the world take the reinvestment possibilities and invest the right amount. And that's really because of agency costs. It arises from the inability to invest the right amount arises in part from the fact that American companies, typically American companies, that's why 70% of my assets are invested in non-US based companies, because I think we are much more apt to find the talent base, the historic brands, in parts of the world through companies that are headquartered in Europe than in the U.S. The U.S. doesn't have the same dynastic history.